It's a real pleasure to meet you, sir.
My employees call me sir. My friends call me Lewis.
Yeah, well, my friends call me Lee, but a handsome, older gentleman like yourself can call me Aileen.
What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani. I have right here via Zoom a very special guest. He is a very talented, prominent American filmmaker, Daniel Farrands. He's the man behind Halloween 6. He's done a number of different films, and most recently, he's putting out there a new take on the Aileen Wuornos story, Aileen Wuornos, American Boogeywoman, coming very shortly to video on demand and DVD. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. How's everything going?
Everything's good. Good. We had a few little technical hiccups there to get on, but thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Was it intended for you to release American Boogeywoman around Halloween time, given your tie-ins to the Halloween series?
You know, I think that was purely coincidental. I certainly didn't have a hand in that decision either way, but we had done a companion movie that came out about a month ago called Ted Bundy, American Boogeyman, which I think that, in terms of the distribution plan, I think it was always the idea to have them come out kind of either concurrently or one sort of shortly after the other. So I think that's how it just worked out. And I guess it doesn't hurt that it's Halloween, although, this one isn't your typical kind of, horror movie with Michael Myers, slashing people. We have another one of those coming out this month though too. So
if I'm not mistaken, you filmed the Ted Bundy film and Aileen Wuornos all during the pandemic, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty interesting and pretty, crossing some barriers at the time. I mean, it was really at the height of the pandemic. We were the first independent movie that SAG even allowed to shoot. And I felt like in a way we were like the guinea pigs for bigger movies to see if, this little movie going to be able to pull this off? Because if they can, then the bigger shows can. So it really was like testing the waters and going about working in a completely new way. It was a little nerve-wracking the first time out. I have to say, it just, it was a scary time because we really didn't know where this was all headed. And certainly there was no vaccine at that point and the numbers, we were always kind of watching them and sort of kind of getting an idea of where things were at. And, it was a little nerve-wracking. So maybe that heightened the tension of the movie. I don't know. But it was kind of like inventing a new way of working.
Looking back at that time, are you kind of surprised yourself that you were able to get those films done during that whole chaotic period? Oh,
yeah. I mean, for sure. And, and not only that, but like the budgetary limitations, these are small movies compared to, this is not a Marvel movie. So hardly. I mean, I don't think our entire budget even matches their craft service budget on something like that. No, I mean, it's always money and time with anything that you're doing. You do the best you can. The resources were limited to begin with, and then you end up having to devote a significant portion of your resources to, testing everybody on a kind of rolling basis. And, it just was a whole bunch of new things that ate into your budget and ate into your schedule. So, it was really challenging.
Aileen Wuornos, American Boogeywoman. I had a chance to check out the screening. We won't put out any spoilers or anything like that. But a very interesting take on this serial killer's life. And we've seen a lot of work on her from films to documentaries, a lot of creative license being taken. This is a unique spin here. This is kind of more of her early life when she, for lack of a better phrasing, married a sugar daddy. And it seems like her life could have turned out very differently in her 20s, right?
Really, it did. And the movie sort of takes a what if approach because so little is known about that chapter of Aileen Wuornos' life. I mean, for those who may know who she was, give a quick recap. She was this, tragic woman who, from her earliest days as a child was abused and it was a horrible childhood, which led her at a very early age to drugs and prostitution. And she was sort of traveling the highways of America, just, roaming around. And in her very early 20s, she ended up in a town called DeLand, Florida, where she met a group of young people who, through that, she was introduced to a much, much older man by the name of Lewis Fell. And she, in very short order, married Lewis. But other than the fact that she married him and that the marriage was extremely short-lived and that she was arrested at the time for bar fights and even beating this poor old man, there's not much known about the specifics of the marriage. So the way that I approach the story is, how would Aileen have maybe told it when she was on death row? She had committed, much later in life, she'd committed a series of murders and was convicted of those, for which she ended up paying with her life. So she was executed in 2002. So the movie sort of looks at it through that prism of Aileen telling the story, but is she that reliable in the way she's telling it? Is she telling the truth? Is she stretching the truth? So the movie kind of takes it from that standpoint.
As you mentioned, it's kind of a little known story. Even when I was watching the film, when I initially went on Twitter and just Googled, was trying to randomly search up these facts about her early life, I didn't find a whole lot of info. So where did the inspiration and the information come from for you to eventually make this film?
The idea actually was born with one of our producers, Lucas Jarek. He really had the idea for this. And I kind of took the research he had already done and kind of dug a little bit further and kind of developed the script around that concept. And I thought to myself, like, because so little is known about it, this has to be kind of a movie that's like fiction based on facts. You know what I mean? Like, we are supposing what may have happened. Yes. But also, Aileen was really kind of enamored with old movie stars and, kind of the era of like film noir, Lauren Bacall and Ava Gardner and, all these sort of like, and Betty Davis. I mean, and so I thought, what if she saw herself as that? And so I kind of approached it from a filmmaking standpoint as like a film noir, as a kind of like she's telling this story about this little known chapter of her life, but she's kind of dressing it up and dressing herself up to be this almost larger than life figure. So that's kind of how the movie plays out, because again, so little is known about the truth.
Very interesting. And what was also interesting and kind of mind-numbing in a good way watching the film was seeing who you cast as a young Aileen. Peyton List, who, for those that don't know, is, a gigantic star from the Disney realm. Nowadays, she has Cobra Kai. She's gigantic on social media. She's got, Lord knows, over 20 million followers between TikTok and Instagram and all that jazz. I'm not saying she's the last person you'd expect to portray as Aileen Wuornos, but probably a person that doesn't come to mind. And I thought she did, a hell of a job, given the fact that, most of her roles have been a lot more family friendly. So what was it like working with Peyton, and how did you see her kind of coming into her own and getting more comfortable as time went on?
Yeah, I met Peyton through one of our producers, and kind of like how we're talking now. It was just over Zoom because it's the only safe way to meet people nowadays. But she was just wonderful from the get-go. I had so much fun working with her. She made me laugh every day. She took this very kind of heavy subject matter and just made the set a better place to be, because she just brought such like youthful exuberance and energy, and she was always joking around. She and I kind of have a similar wicked sense of humor, so we kind of bonded in that way. And lots of talk about Cobra Kai on set, of course. And one time she turned me because I'm asking all these questions. She's like, Dan, it's not real. But she's a sweetheart, and we were lucky to get her because she's, as you mentioned, she's extremely busy and her career is really going up, and I'm super proud of her. And I'm just thrilled that we had her for this movie. And I think she shows a different side, and I love that. She's not just sort of in Cobra Kai, she plays kind of, the bad girl, maybe a little misunderstood, but I think she brings kind of a vulnerability to the thing, like she's not so good, but you kind of, there's something about her that your heart kind of goes out to her. You understand, like this young woman has kind of been on the list of have-nots, and it's not easy. And she's doing her best, but she's kind of regressing, even though she's given this brand new opportunity in life to start again and really pave a way for herself with a man who will take care of her. He's got money, he's got resources, and yet, like so many people, she's drawn back to the familiar. And I think that, Peyton really understood it, and she did a lot of research. And, there's big shoes to fill in the sense of like, everybody knows that Charlize Theron played this role. She won an Oscar for this role, but this is different. This is telling a different side of her life, different part of her life. So I didn't want Peyton to come in with those expectations of herself and just sort of own the part and have it the best way that she could. I think she did a great job.
Yeah, and people forget she's still so young. So for her to be kind of thrust into that role, that's a lot of pressure, and I thought she did pretty well.
Yeah, she did. She did. And it was, again, it was a very short schedule and we all kind of were thrown into the mix together. And it was a small group of us making this. And it was nice to have Peyton, but also like veteran actors like Tobin Bell, who's so well known in the Saw films as Jigsaw. And he just brought that kind of experience and elder statesman to the whole thing. And it really was great. It was great to see those two work so well together. They really got along.
Now, whenever you're working with subject matter like this, particularly with true crime,
Yeah.
you kind of have to walk a line between entertainment value, because obviously you want this film to make money, you want people to check it out, but at the same time, you also have the responsibility to, not be considered exploitative and,
I know.
Also kind of maybe making the killer look better than, say, like the unfortunate victim. So for this particular film, for Ted Bundy, for some of the other works you've done as far as true crime goes, how do you as a filmmaker kind of walk that line between entertainment and responsibility?
It's a great question. And I think, just if I may for a moment, I feel like we are in a culture where everybody sees the dark side. They see what they want to see. They imbue things with kind of this very negative point of view. And I have to tell you that, like, there's not a project that I've ever approached with that has to do with a true crime or a true story that I haven't, in my mind and in the forefront of everybody's mind making these movies, is the victims and what they went through. By whether it's repeatedly saying those victims' names, talking about their lives, talking about the impact that these deaths and the terrible loss of life has had on their loved ones. I mean, that's just a point of view that I want, and I feel like it's very important to show, as opposed to, oh, isn't it cool that they're killing all these people? This isn't a slasher film or any of these films like a Halloween or Friday the 13th, any of the things. You can see that on the wall behind me. You obviously know I'm a fan of these things, but I am very careful and I'm always extremely sensitive toward it. So when people come out and say exploitation, all this, I feel like that's a really easy thing to say. And it's almost like they go in wanting to see that, as opposed to all the other things that are in the movie that show, the humanity of the whole thing. And I think that that's unfortunate. We live in a time where everything has to be judged from this very kind of like, negative way, or the word is problematic that people use. So I am careful and I'm very much aware of what we're making and sensitive to it.
On I guess maybe a lighter / darker note, I'm sure you're aware of the gigantic fan base that Halloween has. I mean, so many films. You're part of its legacy. At the time we're recording this interview, it's around Halloween time. So I got to ask you, man, what are your memories of working on Halloween 6, which, hard to believe now, is what, 26 years old now?
26. I know, and I can't believe I'm not even 26 years old. No, I mean, it just, first of all, it makes me feel old. But secondly, nothing. All of that time in my life was purely a gift. I mean, I truly was like the ultimate Halloween fan that got an audience with kind of like the principal of the school, Mustafa Akkad, the late Mustafa Akkad, who really, I have to say, I credit him with giving me a career now that's lasted 26 years. That movie was my very first studio film. It was my first wide release film. I have nothing but great memories of the time of making. We were in Salt Lake City. It was the last of the franchise to have Donald Pleasance, unfortunately, before he passed away. So there was just a lot, and Paul Rudd, it started his career. So I would say Ant-Man owes it all to me. But he was great. And we were a bunch of kids, kind of making this, like the keys to the little Halloween kingdom were handed to us for a short period of time. And it was just a lot of fun. And it was just an honor to be there. So I still feel the same way today.
I just want to make note for everybody watching and listening. Aileen Wuornos, American Boogeywoman. It'll be available on demand October 8th in the US and on DVD October 15th. That's still correct, right?
That is correct.
Excellent. So yeah, we like to ask some kind of random questions to a lot of our guests just to get to know them better. Are you ready?
I'll go for it. Let's see what we can do.
All right. Favorite late night snack or cheat meal?
Oh, you're gonna laugh. Toast.
That's a cheat. Do you not eat a lot of carbs? Is that the deal?
Yeah. It's just like, I just like, for some reason I got like a hankering for toast always at night. And I don't know, like breakfast food. I don't know. Anyway.
If you weren't a filmmaker, what would you be?
Oh God. I think honestly, an editor, not an editor, like a film editor, but like an editor for a magazine or books.
Interesting.
I love
So
the
you
written
had
words.
so before getting into film, you were kind of like a writer by trade, right? Or you felt like you were a writer by trade?
I mean, I was so young that I started when I was a kid. I was just writing. It was just always my passion from the time I was, so.
What's your most awkward moment as a filmmaker?
God, been so many.
If we're at a party and I'm like, hey man, like tell me something wacky that happened to you on set.
Oh God. Well, I can't name names, but there was an actor who in the middle of a take, his pants actually fell off. Like dropped to like they fell. And we're like shooting the movie and the whole crew just broke out in laughter. And I'm sitting there trying to hold it together. And the scene just went on. But his pants fell off. Yeah.
It seems more awkward for him than you, though.
Yeah, but it was awkward to like, hey, your pants aren't falling. He didn't actually even realize.
Oh, that's awesome. Not for him. That's awesome. Oh man.
Yeah.
What's the biggest do and what's the biggest don't as a filmmaker?
Do you, as that saying goes, like just don't give up and don't, and do things that are meaningful to you, tell stories you want to tell and don't let other people dictate your desire and don't edit yourself before you've had a chance to tell a story or compose a song or whatever. So many people get stuck in that morass of like, oh, it has to be perfect before I do it. And I think that kills a lot of creativity.
In general, as a director, what would you say is the biggest misconception of your job?
That I make a lot of money. It's, it's funny. People are like, oh, you line your pockets. I'm like, wow, no. You do things, some things you do for money, but other things you do because, it's an opportunity, number one, or number two, the subject matter draws you in. So.
What's the best advice you've received in show business or life?
Be the last man standing.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What do you mean by that? Or what do they mean by that?
Just don't, when people, there's so many people that have they start down the road in this industry. And then at some point something happens that kind of derails them creatively, emotionally, and they give up. And I think to just kind of keep picking yourself up, even if you get the slings and arrows of whatever, bad reviews or people want to kick you or, something didn't work out the way you'd hoped. But I think it's important to just keep getting back up.
Besides anybody you've actually cast, who is your all-time favorite actor?
All-time favorite actor? All time? Oh God, that's a long history of things.
Or maybe somebody that comes to mind now, somebody present day.
I was going to say, do they have to be alive?
They could be dead too, whoever.
I always loved Gregory Peck as an actor. I just thought, he just had a heart and so much sensitivity, and it would have been great and lovely to meet him, but great actor. Tom Hanks, of course, we all love. And so, yeah, two off the top of my head.
Why should people check out Aileen Wuornos, American Boogeywoman?
Well, I think people should check out Aileen Wuornos, American Boogeywoman if you're interested in the story of Aileen Wuornos or this little known chapter of her life, but know going in that it is not a documentary about her life. It's not a documentary about this portion of her life. It's a dramatization. But if you want to see a thrilling, inventive, look back on this chapter of her life, but kind of told through like the perception of Aileen and also her fascination with thrillers and film noir, I think this is the movie for you.
Awesome. And once again, that's Aileen Wuornos, American Boogeywoman, on video on demand October 8th, DVD October 15th. You mentioned as well you're working on another project. Can you shed some light on that, maybe for some people who are fans of yours?
Well, there's a couple of things I'm actually involved in right now, and interestingly, I'm going to go. I've done so many in between the feature films. I've done several documentaries that I think a lot of horror fans will know, like Never Sleep Again, The Elm Street Legacy, and Crystal Lake Memories, which encapsulated like in 8 hours the history of the Friday the 13th series. I'm going to tackle the career of a really well-known and I think beloved producer, Deborah Hill. And tell a story that few people know about Deborah Hill's life. And also I'm doing something on the true haunting that inspired Poltergeist, film Poltergeist. So those are a couple things I've gotten in the works.
Daniel, thank you so much for the time. Where can
you.
fans find you and all your work online? Are you on social media?
I am, yeah. So Daniel Farrands, easy to find me on Facebook and Instagram. So Daniel Farrands.